just talk to myself, really, until I see me pop up over there. Because over there is going to tell me when I'm actually completely live. But if you happen to be watching this and I don't see me pop up live, let me know how the volume's going. I never am happy with the volume itself. And that always shows. Looks like we are live, though. So welcome to everyone who was waiting. And I had people waiting, which is crazy to me. So welcome to the Lore Reloaded review of the battle at the binary stars from StarTrek Discovery. So I'm just going to be going over my thoughts, kind of like I did beforehand. I don't expect as many people to be watching this as was on the initial review, because that's when it first came out. So I don't expect that to be huge. But we'll just go through it. Remember to comment. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on how it's going, what you see, and really what you think about it. Because this is a conversation more than it's just me giving my opinion. Look at me as a poor man's lore runner, if you know who Lore Runner is. And if you don't know who Lore Runner is, you need to take a look, because it's just an excellent show. Excellent. And what is going on? Dark1810, who says Discovery was fairly awesome. It was better. It was a lot better than I had expected it to be. And honestly, I think they really failed, because this should have been the show. They should have either started at episode 2, or in my opinion, what a lot of people are saying and what I would agree with, start with episode 3 with her starting on the Discovery and having these flashbacks. Episode 2 was a lot better than episode 1. And I just really wish they had started it out that way, in my opinion. So we're going to go ahead and just jump into it. You guys let me know your thoughts when we go through it. I definitely wasn't sitting here adjusting the font size for people to see. All right. So let's just get into it. Here we go. There's a couple of things I really wanted to. It was a lot worse than you expected. Well, let's get into it. So, a couple of things I'm going to address. A lot of things that I saw on the responses to the first review I did that I think it bears in mind. So, it's funny, when I was first talking about this show, people were saying you have to see it in order to give your opinion, which is bollocks. You can look at the conventions, you can look at what they're putting out and make an opinion. Now, you won't ultimately know till you watch it, but you can still make an educated opinion. So people watch it and we say it's not good. Well, now you got to watch all of it. You're not giving it a chance. And episode 1 was a weak start. Episode 2 was better, so they should have started with episode 2. It's weak starting with episode 1, in my opinion. And I would happen to agree that Orville is superior at the moment. The other thing that keeps coming up would be the cast taking a knee with the NFL. I'm not going to get much into that beyond the saying that I can understand if you don't want to watch something because of what they do. Me personally, I don't care what another person's opinion is if I'm watching their content to be entertained. Now, there are things that people can do to get me not to watch them or not to support them. But for the most part, I don't care what your politics are if you're entertaining me. So that's just me. But let's just jump into the actual review itself. And episode 2 for me proves that Michaels, the XO, is a complete Mary Sue. That doesn't mean that the show is not going to be good. That doesn't mean it's going to suck. But she is a Mary Sue. And I want you guys to think about this first. So, and there are going to be spoilers here. So if you're watching this, it's not spoiler free. Absolutely spoilers. Here's why I think she's a Mary Sue. When the 24 ships from the Klingon shows up, and there's 24, somehow she instantly knows that this is the 24 houses. It couldn't just be reinforcements from one house. And we know that the house has reinforcements because after the houses leave, all of a sudden he pulls in others on his trap. So we know that they could have just pulled in reinforcements. But somehow she instantly knows, and everybody accepts it, right? The other thing I don't like is that she can out-talk the computer. Okay, so let me put this out there. So you have this computer, and we never saw this technology in the original series, and this computer is way more advanced than the Next Generation or DS9. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it never came up. I can, in my head canon, say, okay, the computers have always been this intelligent, we just never saw it because it's not a leap. But she outthinks this computer. She sits there and outthinks and outtalks this computer. She out-ethics it. Now, why didn't this computer come to its own conclusion? Why does it have to have this human explain, hey, if you don't help me get out of this, I'm going to die? Because it knew that already. So she's smarter than the computer, which apparently is so smart that it can act like an intelligent human being. The last thing I'm going to say is that the last thing I'm going to put to this is that I don't think in the position she was put in, most humans or even Vulcans could beat a Klingon in her situation. Now, I'm not saying that they couldn't beat a Klingon, but what I am saying is that they would not be able to beat a Klingon who gets the jump on them, has them from the back, and is trying to just squish the head. That's my opinion. Now, look, if you guys think that I'm crazy on this, please feel free to let me know. Okay? But I really feel like I've given you a good reason why this person is a Mary Sue. And I agree with Aragmar when it comes to a strong written female. I think it's awesome if you have a strong written female. I love strong written females. I love a lot of fiction that has strong written females. And I think Michael is a strong written female, but I think she's also written as a Mary Sue. And I think that they could have written her as a strong female without being a Mary Sue. For instance, the captain. I think the captain, who has some flaws in the writing with her, is a strong female. And I really like the way she's done. And that's my opinion on it. So let's just continue from the start. So she committed mutiny. She attacked her captain. And we have this flashback that I have little use for, so I'm not even going to go into that. And all of a sudden, 24 Klingon ships show up. Fantastic. We have 24 Klingon ships show up, and they send her to the brig, which is where Michaels deserves to go, by the way. Absolutely where Michaels deserves to go. She deserves to be in the brig. So she's sent to the brig, and then it switches over to the Klingons. There's something that's happening with the Klingons I really don't like, and it's the subtitles. Now, a lot of people enjoy the subtitles, and I kind of understand because it's a different culture. It's the quote-unquote Klingons. We'll get into that later. But I kind of get that to a degree. But let me say this. First off, I can't enjoy the fiction if I'm sitting there reading. I had to watch it 2 to 3 times just so I can watch the Klingons, so I can enjoy that atmosphere. And as a father who has a daughter who has dyslexia, it's going to be hard for my daughter to get into this show because she's having to sit there and read, and it's hard for her to do so. It's just unnecessary. If you wanted to do that, I think it would be okay to start out with the conversation with them, with talking Klingon, things of that nature. And maybe after they've talked Klingon, have it switch to human. Because you know how they do. You have them talk Klingon, the subtitles could be in Klingon, and then they move to English. That's personally my opinion. And I was completely proven wrong, and I absolutely hate this. Yes, none of the Klingons look like Klingons. There is no excuse for how they have them right now. Absolutely not one. No excuse. I was hoping that this ship would be like the evolutionary steps would be that's why they look the way they did, but all the Klingons look like non-Klingons. So this is firmly, this plus the technology makes it firmly Kelvin timeline, if not its own little not Kelvin, not prime. And I just don't understand why CBS or the writers or directors or whoever said that it's going to have an explanation would lie to us. Either they're going to look like Klingons or they're not. I just don't understand why they're going to. It's frustrating to me. Frustrating. Something else that people keep bringing up, and they brought it up both in episode 2 and episode 1, which was the Trump bashing, the Republican bashing, etc., etc. Now, I am all about not jiving with PC culture, in my opinion, and I'm all about keep your propaganda out of my Trek. I'm all about that. And so when they do the Klingons say things like destroy our purity, don't let them destroy our purity, or Klingon remain Klingon, I kind of see it, but the only way that I would know it is by reading other people telling me that's what the director meant, or reading when the writers say that, because the writers did say they kind of made it up the U.S. They kind of made it. They were thinking of Trump when they were doing this. So it's not the biggest deal, but I wouldn't have noticed it if they hadn't said it, so it doesn't bug me as much. So talking to Ragmar, who said, going back to her having the fight with the Klingon, which happens at the end, if she was a Vulcan, then she could beat a Klingon maybe. I will grant Klingons and Vulcans fighting have a much better chance than a human and a Klingon or a human and a Vulcan. Vulcans are, 3 times as strong as a human. Klingons are probably stronger than Vulcans, but not by much. So I could see that as an even match. But let's first off, she's a human. But beyond that, let's say that she was a Vulcan. She got jumped from behind by a warrior who is in a ship that did nothing but be warriors. She got jumped, she got grappled, and her head was getting squished. There is no way, not a Vulcan, not a human, not another Klingon. That is game over. I don't care, in my opinion. Now, I'm open to being wrong on that, and if you think that they would have gotten away, that's fine. I just don't think that's realistic, in my opinion. But back to the conversation we were having beforehand, I don't see a lot of the Trump or the religious aspects. And again, keep your agendas out of my Trek. We can have conversations. We can have conversations about religious zealotry, about toxic patriotism. We can have all of these different conversations. I'm all for that, but just keep it out of my Trek. Just keep it out of my Trek. I don't want it to be related to Trump. If you want to do something about Trump, then again, don't make allusions to him and don't talk about it in the back. It's just annoying. A lot of people get upset about the Klingon ships. I don't. I can see why. Some of the Klingon ships look like Klingon ships. Some of them don't. And honestly, the sarcophagus ship, the relic, whatever you want to call it, is it just me or anyone else who's played StarCraft? Does that ship not look like a Terran battle station? Not battle station. Terran. I've been watching too much Battlestar Galactica. Terran destroyer ship. The Terran capital ship. I forget what it's called. Does it not look like the Terran? Because you have the 2 nacelles, and then the neck, and then the big, wow, that's a good image. The big thing in front, the bridge. Does it not look like a Terran battle? What is it? Battle station? A battle something. I honestly think that ship looks like it should be in the Terran Armada, in my opinion. That is, of course, my opinion. So, taking a look, Terran Battlecruiser. Thank you, Terran Battlecruiser. Oh man. Talking to Headless Chicken 6661. Trek has always been about putting current affairs and issues within the show, just very subtle usually. Absolutely, I completely agree. This is one thing Discovery fails at spectacularly. Spectacularly fails at. It's not subtle. It has always been subtle but it's not. It's just in your face. So, one thing I did like, one thing everybody likes, and I'm sure it annoys people, I thought the battle was awesome. And that may be the millennial in me. That may be the guy who likes explosions and graphics. But honestly, I think the battle was very cool, is how I'll put it. I thought it was very realistic too. Now again, I watched this thing 3 times because I love you guys. I've watched it 3 times. And when you watch the ships and how they react, it looks like how a battle should go. I don't have a military training, never been in the military, but the way they're talking and the way the battle goes, I thought was very realistic. Dr. Charisma, is it too late for me to watch episode 1 and 2 on cable? It is. You might be able, you never could watch episode 2. You're going to have to pay money if you watch episode 2. Episode 2 is what you need to watch to see if you're going to like Discovery. Episode 2 is the stronger show. So I would get the free week, if you can, and watch episode 2. If you subscribe, apparently you have to tell your gender, though, which makes no sense. But the visuals were awesome, and I really... So one thing that was cool is you had the Shinzoa, or whatever, the USS Chinese name, I think, coming in, and it was just getting the crap blown out of it. And you see them trying to get away, and it ducks under while 2 other Federation ships come over and come in front of it. You didn't even see tactics like that in DS9, and that could be because they didn't have the technology, and I get that. But you could see ships attempting to save other ships, ships putting themselves in harm's way, ships arming and protecting other ships, happening on both sides, on both the Klingon and the Federation side. So while they're fighting, it looks like they put some measure of thought into the battle itself, which I thought was just amazing. I thought that was cool. That takes thought. You don't just show ships firing at each other and just going all over the screen. It looks like everywhere they moved, there was a reason for it. That, to me, was spectacular. I loved that. And another thing that I really liked, and that I wish that they had done in other Trek, I can't say the word Trek, Trek, in other Trek series, is that when a console explodes and somebody gets thrown, that console no longer works. So they transfer it to another one. So what was kind of cool is that you would have a console explode and a guy just go down. And the captain says, you know, Lieutenant so-and-so, transfer ops. And they transfer that console's controls over to the new over to the guy's console, and he starts reading it out. And then someone's pulling double duty, which is how it's supposed to work. TNG, the original series, Deep Space Nine, if something blew and the person gets thrown down, someone else goes back to that console that just exploded. Never made sense. I thought that was a great addition. That was really cool. There was another piece that I liked that other people don't seem to, and I want to get your guys' opinion on this. Now, this has to be set in the JJ verse at a minimum. It's either its own or it has to be JJ verse. So I want you to think Kelvin timeline when we're going through all of this. It's the only way it makes sense. Connor, I think his name was. Connor gets his console explodes and he's thrown to the ground. The captain says, "Are you okay?" He says, "I'm fine." She tells him to go to medbay, which makes sense. Anytime a main character got thrown down in DS9, usually they just got back up and started working again. Sometimes they were taken down, but it really felt like they just went back to work when they're not. You just had electricity thrown in your face. You need to get out of there. So he's trying to go to the medbay, and he gets confused and ends up in the brig where Michaels is. Now, first off, why doesn't Michaels have a guard? Even if they're being attacked, you would think, since they're using a force field that will go down if, energy drops, they'll have somebody protecting her. And before I continue that, it's not in the Abramverse. Vulcan still exists. So Einar, it still can be, because Vulcan was destroyed during the Enterprise era, and Enterprise hasn't happened. It's 10 years out from Enterprise. So technically, it still could exist because Enterprise hasn't happened. So you have Connors, who walks into the brig, and he has shock, or he has a concussion, and he's talking to Michaels. And I liked how his conversation with her, because in the Abramverse, you're going to have two things, in my opinion. You're going to have a more militarized Starfleet. You're not going to have the Starfleet you had in the Prime timeline because of everything that's happened to them. Because of the attack by, I always call him Shinzon. He is not Shinzon by far. He is the main villain in Star Trek 2009. Oh, he was a Romulan. I'll think of his name in a second. But anyway, after that, you saw an expansion of Section 31. You saw an expansion of military. So you have two competing events. You have the militarization, which wasn't supposed to happen, but is happening in the Kelvin timeline, and the people who want to be explorers in the Prime timeline. And so Connor comes down and kind of gives that. He's kind of out of it. He says, why are we fighting? What's going on? We're explorers. Nero, that's right. We're explorers. What's going on? How is this happening? And Michael is sitting there, and she is, being stalwart. She's like, you need to get to the med bay. Again, this is kind of her being a Mary Sue, because I don't think normal people would react this way, but we'll give it to her. You need to get to the med bay. We're also soldiers. You need to get out of here. I can't help. You're not doing anything good. And I think that's a stark and drastic difference between Kelvin timeline and the Prime timeline. And I think that it is just an awesome piece. I wish we had seen more of that in DS9. We saw a little bit of that in DS9 with people who were saying, we're explorers, we're scientists. But for the most part, once the war happened, we're all soldiers. Let's get it done. And I don't think that it would completely be like that. I think you'd have more Connors. And then Connor gets himself killed. Yeah, I was just about to say wipeout guy. It's funny it happened that way. It won't be to you, but on screen you said that just as I was about to say. He dies. And then what I love is when he dies, her cell is blown all to hell except for this square that perfectly lines up with safety shields or whatever, force fields. Michael, if not a Mary Sue, is the luckiest person in that universe. A perfect square. Everything else explodes around her except this perfect square and the computer. And the computer is able to put a square perfectly around her. Wow. Eric Marr asks, did anyone think of why the Federation had taken Klingon territory? Actually, they were technically in Federation territory, but the Klingons felt like it was an encroachment, and honestly, he was just looking for a war. Didn't matter where that border was. He was looking to start a war. And yeah, another thing. So she has this perfectly shielded place that 1 in 1 billion would happen. And then she probably has the absolute most wondrous view of this battle. I mean, can you imagine that? She's got 3 squares. I mean, it would be scary. It'd be scary as hell. But she would, from all positions, she could see this battle going on. Another thing that made her Mary Sue in that too is when that deck was destroyed, they say it on the bridge, and the captain's like, oh, that's on the bridge. They're like, deck 32 or whatever deck was destroyed, and then the captain's like, oh, that's where the brig was. Now, I imagine there were more than just her and Connor. I would imagine. But the captain only cares about her bestest best friend, who's not a Mary Sue, but just cares about her only, even though so many other people are dying. I mean, so Mr. Bidwell says, to be fair, I think force fields can be projected, so it could have worked. During the old series, I don't think that was possible, but if it's JJ verse, let's give it to him. Let's say it was possible. Yeah, it was possible. It's still amazing that just her, in the entire deck, just her area was able to be protected. But, yeah. So, here comes the part that really annoyed me. She outthinks the computer. Now let's, again, the computer itself having these insane abilities that we've never saw before, I think that from what we have seen the computers do, it's not outside the realm that this is here. So let's say the computers, we've never just observed it. So these computers are just that insanely powerful. The computer should have been able to work out on its own that this is what it had to do to save her life. It absolutely should have been able to say, you know, we got 5 minutes of power. This person's going to die. Let's blow her out. Let's say, hey, here's what I'm about to do. You got a 48% chance of living. I'm going to zoom you out from one side to the other. Nothing else I can do. Can't use transporters. God be with you. Going to happen in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom. Don't even let her think about it. Just boom. But no, apparently the computer is stupid to say, you know, I can't let you go. And then she has to talk it into it because she's smarter than a computer that she's smarter than Skynet, apparently. So the other thing that annoyed me was the link to Sarek. So I didn't know that Vulcans were on the scale of superheroes when it came to telepathic communication. Very, very few aliens have the ability to do what Vulcans can do. And it doesn't have to be from one Vulcan to another. No, we can cross-species this. All we got to do is mind meld. And then apparently, if you give your chakra, or whatever it is, you can talk across long stretches of space. Yeah. Okay, so I don't got much more to add to that. One person commented that they thought that maybe it was like a future Sarek, or maybe she could see the future, and that this was something tied in with that. I don't think the scene itself supports that, and I don't think that that's very legitimate, even for JJ verse, if it's true. Okay, so it's like, hey, you have 48% survival rating. Let's go ahead and do this. Throws her off. So she goes into space. We see her her getting burns, her going up. She goes into the other. She gets into the ship. Going back to the Skynet computer, Headless Chicken 6661 says layers of protocols could interfere with ethical and logical conclusions. I think that's a stretch. I think maybe you could say the computer was so focused on other things it turned off its ethical subroutines. That's kind of scary if you wanted to try to justify it that way, but I guess. Your man, the Vulcan Jesus, communicated with Archer from across time. Your man, the Vulcan Jesus. When did Vulcan Jesus communicate with Archer from across time without technology? Okay, so she goes through, she gets burned horrifically, gets on the other side. Now, let's go with the computer being able to project the force fields. As soon as she got into the other side, if the computer can project force fields, she should have instantly be put in the force field again. Or, if it couldn't project force fields at that point, security should have been called. But nope, She gets out, she gets into the hallway, she gets up, got a few burns on her face, but beyond that, she's skipping on her way to the bridge. Because that's what happens when you're in space for 6 seconds. You're exposed to the vacuum of space, and then you can hold hands with your captain as you skip to the bridge to talk about the next step. So that's her plot for right now. Let's go back to the bridge while she is able to survive 6 minutes in space and be fine. One thing I liked, a lot of people say that the men or the males are weak in this episode, in the 2 episodes. I don't see that personally. I think the science officer who talks about being scared has a great background that explains that, and who ends up being right. So I don't personally see that. And then you have the arrival of, man, I'm horrible with names. You know, for someone who does lore and who apparently is good at it because people like what I do, I'm horrible with names. So we're going to call him Admiral I'm going to die soon. So Admiral I'm going to die soon shows up. And he saves the ship. I liked that. The technology when it comes to the hologram and everything, again, the only way, even if this is updated visuals and updated everything, they never gave us reason to expect holograms existed until DS9. It's just not there. But in a JJ verse where they are skipping and jumping ahead technology because Nero just destroyed them, and then they got all this data from the attack of Nero's ship, and they were able to build. I can believe it then. So Admiral I'm going to die soon comes in and saves the ship, and I thought that was excellent. I liked that. I thought that was very strong. The other characters who are male, I didn't get a vibe that it's an attack on Admiral Zeph Brannigan. Yeah, Admiral Zeph Brannigan. I like that. The science officer had every reason to act quote-unquote cowardly. I don't even think he was cowardly. I just think he was overly cautious. But the Connor who shows up, who has a concussion, is just wanted to be an explorer, and he has a concussion. I just don't think that it puts down males the way everybody thinks it does. I don't see it. If you disagree, that's fine. I personally just don't see it. So he comes and saves the day. And I thought that it was, I thought it was a good scene. I liked it. I thought the Admiral acted very strong, very powerful, very strong male lead. Dark 1810, think the Admiral was hamstrung by his wish to avoid conflict. I think that was very Starfleet. One of the things that I keep bringing up to people, because people are like, you got to fire on the Klingon ship because that's how it's going to stop. In DS9, there was an awesome episode, and I'm trying to think of it. What had happened was, it was during the Cardassian Federation, no, I'm sorry, the Klingon Federation conflict, where they were helping out the Cardassians. And Worf was sent on a mission to assist a transport ship. And what was occurring in this is the transport ships were getting attacked by Klingons. And Worf was head of the Defiant. He was defending the transports. And ultimately, during the combat, Worf thought that he had figured out what the Klingons were doing. The Klingons would come in, they would cloak, they would decloak, attack a transport, then cloak back. Sometimes they would cloak, attack the Defiant, and then try to lead the Defiant away so the other ship could destroy the transports. And so Worf is sitting here and he's fighting these Klingon ships, and he thinks he figures out what is going on. He thinks he figures out their battle tactics. He thinks he knows when they're going to cloak and when they're going to decloak. And so he brings the Defiant around. A ship decloaks. He knows that this is the ship. He's got it down. He orders the destruction of the ship before verifying what kind of ship it was. And he ends up destroying a cloaked Klingon transport that had gotten into the battle. You guys should watch it. It's an excellent episode. At the end of the episode, turns out that the Klingons tried to set him up to make the Federation look bad to stop helping out the Cardassians. At the end of the episode, he's talking with Sisko. And the crux of it is they were saying that he didn't have bloodlust. He wasn't going for him. He was doing what a Federation officer would do. He wasn't being a Klingon and just wanting to kill. And at the end of the episode, he admits, it didn't matter to me what that ship was. I just wanted to kill Klingons. I was so mad at them, I didn't care. And Sisko turns around and he says, you know what? You should have verified. Being a Federation officer means sometimes you will die because you are defending civilians. Because being a Federation officer means you verify who the enemy is and what the enemy wants, and you choose peace first. And sometimes that means giving your life. It means giving the life of your own crew. And that's exactly, in my opinion, why that was not a prime timeline to attack with absolutely no borders. Because you verify. You give peace a chance first. She was in the wrong, in my opinion. So anyway, I think it was a very Federation thing to do for the Admiral to say, if we're fighting, we're not talking. Thought he was strong. Then they bring up the cloak, which apparently this is a perfect cloak. This guy has the Klingon, head Klingon, I don't know. Klingon, I'm not a racist, whatever his name was. The Klingon has this perfect cloak, and a lot of people keep asking me about this. I haven't researched it. I don't know when the Romulans gave the cloaking technology to the Klingons. It's possible at this point that they had cloaking technology, but even if they did, it's not perfect cloaking technology. We know from the original series that you could track Klingon cloaks because they couldn't hide all of their emissions, but this one apparently you can. I'm not completely against that because of the sarcophagus ship. So the sarcophagus ship seems to have a huge, well, it did until it got destroyed, a huge amount of significance. And maybe this was an ancient technology or a refined technology that was forgotten because the Klingons were always fighting each other. So even if the Romulans didn't give the technology, it's possible that maybe they stole it from a Romulan ship, or maybe it is some kind of special tech. It just doesn't bother me all that much because there's several explanations they could have for it at that timeline. And I hope they explain it, because if they didn't have it yet, then they do need to explain it, but probably aren't going to. Because Beyond News is telling me that they didn't have it at this time, so maybe they didn't. But I think that it can be explained away. It's not a huge deal for me. Here's a question for you guys that keeps coming up into my mind. So the Federation got the crap beat out of it, but the Admiral points out so did the Klingons. Now, apparently, because Michaels is some kind of, knowledge knower of knowledge, she knows that every ship represents one of the houses. So the houses show up, and the leaders all show up. They all come. They the Klingons. I loved it that when the signal went off, one of the comments was the Klingons have called for aid. That Gondor thing. And we will. I forget what it was from. Oh wow! I was gonna say Game of Thrones. That's gonna make a lot of people mad. From the Hobbits. Lord of the Rings. Gondor has called for aid. The Klingons have called for aid, and we will answer. So every one of these ships is a leader from the 24 houses. And if you watch the battle, the Klingons take a heck of a beating. I mean, the Federation just whoops them up one side, down the other. Now, the Federation isn't doing the best itself, but I really think that when the battle comes out, we're going to see that they did a lot better. Isn't that destroying the leaders of those houses? So aren't those houses now going to be in turmoil? Because before he orders them to leave, a lot of those ships are destroyed. And remember, there's only 24, one for each house. Which is interesting, because then when he tells them to withdraw, you see all of the leaders there, but some of them should be dead. Unless those ships were envoys, and if they were envoys, then why didn't they just call before the envoys arrived? I don't know. So anyway, you got the perfect cloak. The perfect cloak just slams into Admiral Zeph Brannigan's ship and is just completely obliterated. He does a self-destruct and just blows them to hell too. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was very very Federation, because that's what they do. If you noticed, if you've watched the shows or read the books, if they are screwed, if a Federation ship is screwed, generally it's going to self-destruct to screw the other ships. Picard has done it. Kirk has done it. Even Cisco did it. So that was very Federation, I thought. The Fed has better shields. A lot of people got upset about the fact that when they were being attacked, you couldn't see the shields. See, I didn't get mad at that, because if you look in the movies and later DS9, you see that the shield doesn't do a bubble, but it actually goes around the ship, which makes more sense. If you're going to do a shield, you don't want to do this huge bubble, because that's just more space and it would take more energy. It would make sense just to have the bubble run along the ship's size. And I think the reason they had shielded bubbles was because it was easier to do that in Adobe than not having bubbles. I would fancy myself a very, very primitive, I don't want to say coder, but I like to put battle scenes together. No one's ever going to see them because they're not that good. And let me tell you, doing a bubble is a lot easier than trying to have a ship follow when it comes to graphics. Let's see. Beyond News says, by 2269, the cloaking device had spread to the Klingon Empire as well. One of the first Klingon vessels to be equipped with the device was the Imperial Klingon Service Klothos. So, yeah, I don't mind the shields. And to Aragamar, you can extend it into bubbles to help other ships, sure, but I think the initial way it would be is just to go around the ship. Now, if you were helping another ship, maybe you can make it into a bubble. That would make sense. You'd have the technology to do that. But initially, I think the shield would go around like a skin, like Mr. Vlogwatcher says. So the shield is more like an energy skin around the shell of the ship. Yes, I would say that makes more sense. We saw that in later DS9. We see that in later Next Generation movies. So I think that makes a ton more sense. And I like it more, in my opinion. So every time they do a flashback, it's useless to me. I really don't like that. One of the things that upset me, just going back for a second, so the Shinzu, or I don't know, whatever, the name of the ship we see until Episode 3, the Klingons don't give it a honorable death. This kind of bothered me. So you have this Shinzu. The Shinzu has been fighting. It's destroyed several Klingon ships. It's been an honorable fight. And honor, remain Klingon. Honor is supposed to be there. Klingons give honorable deaths to warriors, and they always have. So you have the Shinzu coming, and it's about to slam into this rock, and it's completely powerless. It has nothing. This would be a dishonorable death, and a Klingon ship is coming up behind it, and they swerve away. That, to me, would bring dishonor on that Klingon ship. I think a Klingon ship would have destroyed them as a part of being honorable, in my opinion. You know, it's great. I have to do a video tomorrow about the Borg and their impact on the Dominion War, and my voice is going out because I'm talking so much right now. Fantastic. The Klingons did not give an honorable death. And I think that was a shame. Another part that comes up is you notice that when the ship gets hit, there's apparently this ship, the armor is made out of like candy brittle, made out of like Snickers bars. Because as soon as they get past that shield, even when it has shields, they're punching holes in that ship left and right. One thing some people complained about, I didn't mind, was when there was a hole, instantly a force field would arrive, and that even happens on the bridge. I think that is consistent, and I think that's how it would work across Trek. Because even if everything else goes, the emptiness of space is going to kill everyone. So the fact that they have it set up so that shields happen no matter what would make sense. So Shinzu should be destroyed. They should have gotten their honorable death. They didn't. Honestly, I think that was just bad writing, and it should have brought dishonor upon one of the houses, because this is the leadership's ship, their envoy at the least, and they didn't give a warrior the honorable death that warrior deserved. Completely un-Klingon. I already talked about this, but the holo communications. So apparently now, one thing that came up. So the holo communicator, Voyager came up. One of the biggest parts of Voyager that they had an issue with was the hologram doctor and how he could not leave. That was like a big part of season 1 and season 2. And apparently, if we believe this is Prime, they had that technology and then forgot it when they made Voyager, which, by the way, has been called at multiple times both a warship and a scientific exploratory ship, and it was supposed to be the most advanced ship in the Federation at the time of its launch. It's so advanced that they used organic material in it, and they didn't have holograms. So this has to be Kelvin timeline, or apparently the Federation are idiots and they forgot that technology. And I didn't mind it as long as it's not Prime. I don't mind all of these technological advances, because for me, I can just headcanon that Kelvin timeline would be more advanced because of what occurred. Yeah. But what about the Cylons? That's Star Trek, right? You're banned, Tim Turner. Tim Turner's a friend of mine. I know him in real life. He's banned. He's not allowed to be here anymore. Just get gone. Get good. All right, so let's move to everybody's favorite topic. So now, the Shinzu is completely out of power. Michaels can survive space with only some burns on her face that instantly go away at some point. And now they're trying to figure out how to destroy this Klingon ship. And they're wanting to attach a bomb to it in some way. That I don't have a problem with. I would agree when people say that's more Battlestar Galactica, that's more Babylon 5. It is. Those are Babylon 5 and Battlestar Galactica tactics, but it's extreme measures, and they need it. The Federation forces are gone. They have to protect themselves. They want to get one final blow. They want to capture the guy, so they want to do a bomb and blow it to hell. That makes sense, and they want to do it in a deceptive way. That also makes sense. They don't have any other way of doing this. Now, what do they decide to do? Let's plant it on a dead body of a Klingon, because we know that Klingons get their dead. So we'll just take a bomb, we'll put it in a Klingon, and apparently that bomb's going to be so powerful that it's just going to destroy the ship. That is so far away from Federation and Prime Starfleet than you can get. And it is pushing it for a Kelvin timeline Starfleet. If you look at it from a Kelvin point of view, it barely makes sense. In the Kelvin timeline, Section 31, that originally started out as just a group of people with no offices, now had major offices and major installations that were in plain sight, like in libraries and things like that. So Section 31 is massive. Section 31 doesn't mind poisoning people. Section 31 doesn't mind not eugenics, but doesn't mind genocide. Doesn't mind genocide. And in the Kelvin timeline, you also see during the Enterprise that they were willing to even use Khan to genocide Klingons. So you have admirals, you have captains, you have civilians who in the Kelvin timeline are willing to do this throughout the Federation. It didn't just all of a sudden happen in the Kelvin Enterprise era. It would have been throughout. So, at this point, now, you have a captain who wants to use a body to blow it up. I think that it would push the limits, but she might have been able to get away with it in a Kelvin timeline where they want to genocide the Klingons, where they want to bring Khan back, where Section 31 is so prolific that they have installations on Earth. Could not, at any point, could not happen in a prime timeline Starfleet. No point. That would have been a big stickler when she was put before the inquiry board. And you know, here's another thing that brought up, and I think Headless Chicken, I'm not completely sure how Headless Chicken felt, what he was responding to, but he did bring up Sisko, and Sisko did a couple of things that I feel is not a primetime Starfleet and should have gotten him completely thrown out, including he did a biological attack on a planet and everyone had to escape. Now, he did it in a way that everyone could escape, but he still bombed a planet using weapons of mass destruction and got away with it. So DS9 had its flaws. I think that was the most un-Federation, un-Starfleet Sisko ever did, and the fact he got away with it was the most un-Starfleet. By the way, guys, Rational Roundtable, if you don't know this guy or you haven't listened to him, click on his name, go to his channel and subscribe. He does a lot of reviews. He takes a lot dimmer view of this show than I do, but I think he brings up great points. So if you haven't and you're watching this, go subscribe to him, tell him Lore Reloaded said hi. And he says Section 31 is still not overt in Kelvin. The facility that was bombed was thought to be general public, to be a library of the installation. Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying. Rational Roundtable is that when I mean overt, I mean it went from people who never had an office to having their own installation. So when I say overt, I just mean probably more expanded. I don't necessarily mean overt. Okay. So we desecrated the dead body, and at this point, we're now going to beam over there, and we're going to capture the head guy so that we don't turn him into a martyr, and so that we can use him. Now, again, this goes back to Michael kind of being a Mary Sue, giving how they can get away, but I don't disagree with her logic. I think that capturing a leader would dishonor him and may stop the war. So I'm all for that. Let's go with that. So they beam over. So obviously, what they're going to do is they have to beam over onto a Klingon bridge. Now, this is a Klingon bridge with Klingon warriors who have trained for years, for 200 years. They've been just training and fighting. These are warriors. It would be hard for a Vulcan to take on a Klingon. They're bred for battle. This is the worst that you could think of when it comes to fighting. So obviously what they're going to do is they're going to at least get, 12 to 30 Starfleet officers, and they're going to beam 12 to 30 over there, all of them on stun, and they're just going to wipe everyone away, because that's what you would do. And obviously, because I'm being sarcastic, they don't do that. Who do they send? They send the captain and the XO who tried to commit mutiny. No one else. No one else. So, Rational Roundtable, yeah, captured just like Bin Laden. That's not appropriate. Mad Dog says, why does it say he has no content? He does have content. Go to videos. He's redoing his channel. Trust me, he makes good content. If you go to videos, you'll see his review. He just needs to get his channel up to date. So subscribe to him. He does have content. Just go subscribe to him. Just trust me. Subscribe. And yeah, so Mako troops which we saw in Enterprise. Enterprise, the original Enterprise, not the original Enterprise, I'm sorry. Enterprise with Captain Archer had Makos. And so why weren't they there? But yes, they should have sent more. So they send XO Mary Sue, and they send the captain. We talked about this at the beginning of the video, but let's just go ahead and go back into it. So this is a human. She's a human, and she gets jumped by the head Klingon. Let's look at the way Klingons work. First off, if you are weak and someone thinks that they can beat you, they are going to kill you. A Klingon has to have a Klingon, the head of a household, is constantly in danger of being killed by other Klingons. His torchbearers also have to be up to snuff. So a human is beamed aboard. And by the way, I want to shout out to Rational Roundtable, because he's the one I talked about on the phone. I talked with him about it, and he brought this up, and I thought it was a great point. This is why you should subscribe to him. He thinks up a lot of stuff, and he's just a great person to talk about lore with. A human gets jumped by a Klingon. She comes up from behind and is grappled. And then he begins to press on her head, kind of like what you saw in Khan. She should be dead, because she doesn't use technology to win. She isn't able to get her weapon and like shoot him from behind. That would make sense. No. She overpowers him. A human overpowers a Klingon. Oh yeah, so Beyond News asks, and what the hell are torchbearers? They haven't told us yet. Hopefully we figure that out. And yeah, her bones would have been broken after the first punch. Yeah. It's just, there's no way. There's no way she wins this fight. And if she's, and some people were saying, well, you know, she was on Vulcan, and if she is a Vulcan, she may have had. Vulcans are 3 times stronger than humans, so I think they have a better chance of winning, but not when they're jumped. I don't even think a Klingon male jumped by another Klingon male in the way that she was jumped would win, my opinion. But all right, so yeah. So she hits his eye, she sends him back, you know, she pummels him, and then she turns. The captain isn't jumped. She has a fair fight with the dude, and she's getting owned like she should get owned. If you're a human fighting a Klingon, you get owned. It's just the way it works. It's not racist. It's not me saying Klingons are better than humans. It's just saying that a human fighting a Klingon means death for the human, and that's exactly what's happened to the captain. Spoilers: she gets pwned and killed. And so what does this XO do? This was the XO's idea, by the way. This was Michael's idea. She kills him. So this plan, which I thought was a good plan, let's screw that. She switches it. It was on stun. She switches it to kill mode. So screw saving anybody else. Screw the rest of the Federation. Let's kill him. So I will give it to you that maybe it was an emotional response. So let's just say it was an emotional response. So after you kill him, why aren't we grabbing the torchbearer? This other Klingon, I mean, you could say that she didn't know his importance, so maybe we get away with that. Thanks for coming, Rational Roundtable. Appreciate it, brother. And so I liked it. Doesn't so Dark 1810 says I liked the fact that she killed him. It showed her human side. Yeah, I'll give it to you. It could have been a heat of the moment. But she doomed the Federation. She really did. Just anyway. All right. So the next part I did like was the science officer. So the science officer, he says, so we need to get you and the captain out. She says, take the captain. I don't got a life sign. I'm not pulling back someone who doesn't have a life sign. I'm pulling you back. Beams are back. Right decision. Maybe he should have been like, you need to grab the torchbearer, take him with you, or grab somebody. But for the most part, he pulled her out. Right move. Nailed it right there. That was the right move. And so then they escape. And at that point, you think the torchbearer, I don't know his name, the albino Klingon, is going to be in charge. So that'll be an interesting term. And then she's brought before the admirals, whatever, the inquiry. And she is given a life sentence. That absolutely should have happened. I'm glad it ended like that. I hate the whole I hate the fact that they tried to make her empathetic by well, I hate because it felt like they tried to force you to be okay with what she did or to sympathize with her when she's gotten a lot of people killed and has doomed the Federation. She's not a good person. She's not a hero. Nothing she did was intelligent. She has likely gotten them all killed, and she deserves what she gets. Absolutely deserves what she gets. And they tried to make you sympathize with her, and I hated that. But I like the fact that there were consequences. And the way they made it seem, in the next episode, she's destined to go to whatever colony where she should rot for the rest of her life. And she's intercepted by the Discovery. Now, here's an interesting thing that I think would make sense and would be very interesting. Well, I said interesting a lot. What if the Discovery is a Section 31 ship? What do you guys think about that? The Discovery is a Section 31 ship. He reroutes it to make it look like she's going to go spend the rest of her life wherever, and she ends up on the Discovery. What do you guys think? Beyond News says this is going to be like a Dirty Dozen or Expendables in space. I hope not. I hope not. Sorry, I don't want to drink while I'm doing this, but I've been here a while. So we're towards the end of it. Overall, it was a stronger outing. It was this episode. If you have to have the Shinzu again, it should have started at episode 3 with her having flashbacks of why she's a prisoner. But if you need to have the Shinzu, if that has to be out there, then it should have been episode 2. Episode 2 should have been episode 1. Everything, all of that filler was unnecessary. Well, so Dark 1810 says Discovery looks like a crappy explorer ship. She doesn't look like a combat ship. Discovery, it doesn't look like a Federation ship, which gives credence that it's a Section 31. Discovery, generally, so when, and this is something I actually looked up, when Roddenberry was putting it together, he had specific requirements for ships. Federation ships had to have the saucer. I know you kind of do in Discovery, but you really don't. They had to have the saucer. They had to have the nacelles close to each other. There was a design you had to do. You weren't allowed to make a Federation ship if it didn't meet basically the design of the original Constitution class Enterprise or the Excelsior. When originally happened, Voyager would never have been allowed. The Voyager class ship never would have been allowed. A Cura-class ship wouldn't have been allowed. So during this time, you have a ship that doesn't match. And we have to explain that What better way to explain that than Section 31? What I'm open to ideas, but it could just be the writers saying, you know what, screw this. We don't want to listen to canon because we haven't done that all the way up to here. So why stop now? But just trying to explain it. And if it is, the USS Discovery looks like a discount USS Marie Curie, Bev Crusher's ship. That's funny. If you saw Bev Crusher, if you've seen Beverly Crusher's ship, it was not a notable design. I'll say that. Here's my hopes. Sunday, I'm going to be doing episode 3. We're going to be back here again, guys. If you're watching, please come back and watch again. But here's what I hope. I hope that the Discovery is some kind of Section 31 ship, or not Section 31 ship, maybe a special ops ship. There's something special about this ship that keeps it off the radar. And I hope that what we saw in the commercials was the science officer says, you know, you're needed, but we can't trust you. That needs to continue. That needs to continue for season 1. They shouldn't. I mean, it shouldn't be 1 episode. Now you're a part of the crew. Shouldn't be 4 episodes. Now you're a part of the crew. She should be something that needs to be attained for 1 season, in my opinion. Headless Chicken 6661 says, so Discovery works outside the bounds of Federation restraints like StarTrek Renegades? Yes, I would agree. Like Star Trek Renegades. You know, people have asked me to do Star Trek Renegades lore. I think, so this is just me talking. I think it's really cool that people are asking me to do other lore, fanfic lore and other things. If you guys ever have a request, definitely let me know. She's basically black female Tom Paris. Kinda. Tom Paris didn't do near what she did, but yeah. And one thing I didn't like about Tom Paris is that it took like 4 episodes and then he's a part of the crew. I think they should have brought his arc out. I ultimately like Tom Paris. But man, yeah, the more you think about it, she is Tom Paris, isn't it? Tom Paris could do almost anything, was almost universally liked. Huh, she is. Yeah, she is. She's discount Tom Paris. That's horrible. Guys, if you have liked this, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you want to see. Please be here every Sunday because I'll be doing this. And then after this, if you guys want me to continue just to have these Sunday, maybe we'll pick up another genre or another show that we can go through. And hey, if you want me to do specific lore, let me know. If you're letting me know in the comments right now, please wait for it to re-upload. Let me know in the comments then. So that I can copy it down, because it doesn't keep the comments, unfortunately. Hey, if you want me to do lore for you specifically, and you want that lore done quickly, because if you ask for lore now, it's probably going to be a couple weeks to a month before I get to your request. If you want it put at the front of the list, I have a Patreon, patreon.com/lore reloaded. I do this for a living, but I cannot just, I'm going to do it for a couple more years, and then I have to get a real job if I'm not making enough money here. Something to consider. Even if you don't, I'll still be doing lore. So hang out. Everything's going to be absolutely free, so you don't have to worry about that. You just get advantages if you become a patron. Guys, thanks so much. I'm going to see you on the next. Oh, tomorrow, Wolf 359, the Borg. I'm staying up all night to get this done. We're going to be talking about how the Borg helped militarize the Federation. So be sure to be subscribed to this channel and hit the little link so that you get notifications, because that's coming up. Star Trek Dominion War series continues tomorrow. Thank you so much. And guys, I'm going to see you on the next Lore Reloaded.